Welcome to Bristol, Rhode Island, and to Linden Place. This beautiful 1810 Federal-style mansion was built by George and Charlotte DeWolf, but it tells over 200 years of American history, and today we're going inside to see a special exhibit called Barrymore and Bristol. This is George and Charlotte DeWolf. The DeWolfs made their fortune in the transatlantic slave trade. In 1825, however, George went bankrupt and he and his young family fled Bristol for Cuba. George's cousin William owned the mansion for a while. Then in 1865, the house was purchased by George's daughter, Theodora DeWolf Colt, and we see her here next to her husband, Christopher Colt, who was the brother of the famous gun manufacturer of Connecticut, Samuel Colt. In 1909, a new chapter in the history of the house began when Samuel Pomeroy Colt's son, Russell, married the renowned stage actress Ethel Barrymore. She was sister to fellow actors John and Lionel. Her style, her voice, her talent, and her wit made her the first lady of the American theater. This exhibit, filled with artifacts from the museum's collection, reflects that chapter of the Linden Place story. In this vignette, arranged in the formal dining room of the mansion, visitors learn that Ethel Barrymore's remarkable career in film and theater spanned 5 decades with appearances in more than 60 theater productions and 35 films. Nominated for an Academy Award 4 times, she won as Best Supporting Actress in 1944 for her role opposite Cary Grant in None But the Lonely Heart. But most fans agree that one of her most outstanding stage roles was that of Miss Moffat in The Corn is Green. The original Broadway production premiered at the National Theater in November 1940 and ran for 477 performances. On this table, we also see 2 telegrams dated November 1957. One has this message: "Please convey to Miss Ethel Barrymore my warm congratulations on the 65th anniversary of her memorable career in the theater and my good wishes for years to come." As you can see, it's signed by Winston S. Churchill. Although Ms. Barrymore allegedly turned down his proposal of marriage over 50 years earlier, it appears he held no grudge. Ms. Barrymore was on tour in 1903 with the production of A Country Mouse, a comedy in 3 acts by Arthur Law. One day while in Boston, she received a note from the painter John Singer Sargent. "Would it be possible to give me an hour or 2? I would like to do a drawing of you." In her biography, Miss Barrymore writes, "Of course, it was the most exciting thing." He was working on his profits for the Boston Public Library at the time. "He was delightful, humming around the room while he worked. He gave me the drawing, which he later said was his favorite charcoal. It is quite my most treasured possession." So here in the front parlor, we have a vignette to represent the bridal luncheon that Ethel Barrymore attended in 1911 to celebrate the upcoming marriage of Judge LeBaron Colt's daughter Primrose to Andrew Weeks Anthony of the Boston banking family. The floral decor was reported by the local newspaper to be pink roses and lily of the valley. The table our visitors see in this vignette holds one place setting and various serving pieces from the Colt family collection. They're representative of the period, including china made in Limoges, France, and medallion silverware popular in the late 1800s. Another guest who joined Miss Barrymore at the luncheon was Judge Colt's daughter-in-law, Mrs. LeBaron Colt, known as Juju. These 2 women, Ethel and Juju, represent a changing America, transitioning from the Gilded Age to the Progressive Era. Mrs. Colt would go on to be the president of the Bristol County Equal Suffrage League, organizing women to lobby for the right to vote. In 1919, Ms. Barrymore became a staunch supporter of the Actors' Equity Union during their strike for fair pay and better working conditions. The Linden Place Conservatory serves as the stand-in for a beloved theater in Bristol. The Pastime Theater opened on March 12, 1912. In 1914, Ms. Barrymore's first silent film, The Nightingale, was shown here. Ms. Barrymore went on to appear in 15 silent films from 1914 to 1919. In 1917, her film, The Awakening of Helena Richie, was featured at the Pastime. On exhibit here, we have red acrylic signs from the theater indicating the movies now playing and coming soon, as well as starts Friday. We also have movie reels and a film splicer, and we're displaying movie posters from features shown at the Pastime over the years. In the 1980s, the Pastime became the Bristol Cinema. In September of 2006, over the objections of many in the community, the building was torn down to make way for an addition to a school. Colonel Colt used this conservatory as his law office, and as you can see, there are stacks of fireproof boxes stenciled with the names of some of his clients, like Town of Bristol, like Burnside, and like Vanderbilt. So here we are in the Colt bedroom. Colonel Samuel Pomeroy Colt was named after his paternal uncle, Samuel Colt, the famed gun manufacturer and inventor of the Colt revolver. Colonel Colt served as president of the Industrial Trust Company, which would later become Fleet Bank, now merged into Bank of America, and the United States Rubber Company, later known as Uniroyal. He sat on the boards of directors for 23 businesses around the nation. Colonel Colt's son Russell had a chance meeting with actress Ethel Barrymore in New York in September of 1908. And after a whirlwind romance, they married in 1909 and had their first child in the same year. 10 years later, in July of 1919, the couple and their 3 children, along with over 100 guests, attended a clam bake in their honor in Bristol. Everyone there was delighted to welcome Russell Colt home from France, where he served with the U.S. Aviation Corps during World War I. As one of Bristol's great folks, Colonel Colt had one of the most impressive sites in Bristol to host a clam bake. Guests entered his 464 acres of open field farmland through a gate adorned with 2 bronze sculptures of mighty bulls mounted on a marble base. His farm was a Gilded Age gentleman's indulgence. Miss Barrymore writes fondly of her time spent there with her children. In her autobiography, she wrote that watching the litters of newborn squealing piglets delighted her children for hours. She recounts that many afternoons were spent riding ponies along the shore of Narragansett Bay. In Colonel Colt's 1921 will, the property was gifted to the people of Rhode Island for their recreational pleasure. It is now Colt State Park. Colonel Colt's registered Jersey cows were award-winning producers known for the high fat content of their milk. In 1878, the first glass milk bottle was patented. It was called the Leicester Milk Jar. Milk was sold in glass bottles for the first time a few years later in 1879. By the 1920s, designs and advertisements were etched onto the glass. So here we are in what we call the Barrymore bedroom of Linden Place. And we wanted to show some items that were representative of sort of fashion and travel of the day. This was also a prime spot to sit at the front window to watch the 4th of July parade go by. So we have, for example, from our Linden Place collection in this room, some luggage that belonged to Russell Colt with his initials on it. We also have fashion that's representative of the period. The tea dress became popular in the early 1900s as a looser, more flowy dress that allowed women to forego their corsets. And so we have an example of that in this bedroom. We also have fur pillbox hats. Remember Jackie Kennedy? That belonged to Ethel Barrymore Colt Jr. And we have a top hat that belonged to Russell Colt that dates to the early 1900s. So here we have some examples of hat pins and jewelry from the early 1900s. The brooch is closer to the Art Nouveau period than the Art Deco period. Hat pins became less popular as we approached 1910, 1915 and the First World War, as hairstyles and hats became more compact. Some of them are almost 9 inches long, so they came in handy if you had a masher that decided to get a little close to you on the street. We also in this bedroom have a beautiful portrait of Ethel and Russell's young daughter, Ethel Barrymore Colt Miglietta, over the 19th century French sleigh bed. And here on the grand piano that belonged to Ethel Barrymore Colt Miglietta, we have mementos that include the fact that they were the last family to live in Linden Place prior to its rebirth as a house museum. Ethel Barrymore Colt Miglietta was a tireless champion for the Bristol Art Museum. The first organizing committee met in October of 1962. Ethel offered to give a concert to raise money. One of her concerts was reviewed this way: "Her background and training are clearly evident in every gesture, inflection of voice, or facial expression. Her power to project a mood is marvelous." The Bristol Art Museum stands on the Linden Place grounds today. Mrs. Migluetta passed in 1977 and is buried here in Bristol at Juniper Hill Cemetery. Her New York Times obituary on May 4th, 1977 said she had the Barrymore family eyes and her mother's resonant voice. Unlike her mother, whose dream to be a singer never came true, Sister, as she was affectionately known, was born in 1912 and fulfilled her own dreams, and as a lyric soprano appeared in over 100 concerts in the USA abroad. Ethel Barrymore Colt Miglietta managed a touring repertory company named the Jitney Players, sang with 8 opera companies, and toured Europe in a one-woman show sponsored by the U.S. State Department's Cultural Exchange Program. She conducted classes at Linden Place in stage technique and musical theater. Married in 1944 to Romeo Migluetta, they soon welcomed a son whom they named John. So now we're entering our last stop of the tour, the Dot Bullock bedroom. Dot was the wife of Colonel Colt. And we thought our visitors to the Barrymore exhibit would enjoy dressing up in a hat or a scarf and taking a selfie with Ethel, as this is where they say goodbye to Ethel and the exhibit. On June 19, 1959, the New York Times reported the death in California of, quote, one of stage's royal family. The obituary read, "Ethel Barrymore, last of the trio known to Broadway and Hollywood, as the royal family of acting, died here today of a heart ailment. She would have been 80 years old on August 15th. The star, descended from two of the theater's great families, the Barrymores and the Drews, achieved her dramatic fame in the golden era of the American theater and held her grip on the hearts of theatergoers long after she moved from glamorous roles to mature characterizations. Last night at 8:30, in remembrance of Miss Barrymore, the marquee lights of the Ethel Barrymore Theater in New York City were dimmed for 10 minutes just before the performance of A Raisin in the Sun. When Colonel Colt died in 1921, the terms of his will stipulated that Linden Place was to remain in trust with the Industrial National Trust, the bank he founded, until such time as he had only one surviving grandchild. It would be 65 years before that request would be realized. Assisted by a significant bond approved by voters, the Friends of Linden Place bought the property in 1989, 30 years after the death of Ethel Barrymore Colt and 12 years after the death of her daughter, Ethel Colt Miglietta. Linden Place has been operating as a historic estate museum ever since. We at Linden Place are proud to have been part of the lives of this rare and exceptional woman and her multi-talented daughter. We hope you've enjoyed our video of the special limited run of the Barrymore and Bristol exhibit at Linden Place. For more information, our website is www.lindenplace.org, or better yet, come visit us. We're at 500 Hope Street, Bristol, Rhode Island, 02809. We also would like to thank our community collaborators, the Bristol Historical and Preservation Society, the Rogers Free Library, the Bristol Art Museum, and Blythewall Mansion for their help and support in bringing together this special project.